The Appalachian Mountains are old, older than memory. They rise like a great slumbering spine along the eastern edge of a continent, their peaks often wreathed in mist, their hollows holding secrets best left undisturbed. Deep within this ancient range lies a place known only in hushed whispers, a scar in the wilderness called Wraith Pass. It is not a welcoming place. The trees here grow too close, their branches tangled like skeletal fingers, blocking out the sun even at midday. The air is heavy. Even the wind seems to speak a different language in Wraith Pass. It sighs through the gnarled branches, carrying with it a mournful sound, a chilling lament that seems to echo from the very stones. Locals, those few who still live near the pass's brooding entrances, say it's the mountain itself breathing, or perhaps something else. The isolation is profound. You can walk for miles and see no sign of human life, only the silent, watchful presence of the ancient forest. Through the heart of Wraith Pass, a railway line was once carved. Men blasted through rock and felled ancient trees, laying down iron tracks that gleamed under the moon. Trains once thundered through, carrying coal and timber and people with dreams of elsewhere. Now the tracks are mostly gone, swallowed by rust and the relentless green of nature. And it is here, along this phantom railway, that the legend of Maeve Corbin, the Witch of Wraith Pass, was born in tragedy and fire and the screaming of steam. Maeve Corbin was not always a name to curdle the blood. Once it was spoken with respect, perhaps a little awe, but not fear. She was a woman of the mountains, born in a cabin nestled so deep in a hollow that the sun only found it for a few hours each day. She knew the secret names of the plants that clung to the rocky slopes. She understood the language of the streams and the whispers of the wind. Her hands, though often stained with berry juice or garden soil, were gentle. They knew how to soothe a fever, how to set a broken bone, how to coax life into the world. Her true calling was midwifery. In those isolated communities clinging to the mountainsides, doctors were a distant dream. Maeve was the one they called when a woman's time came. She would walk for miles, in sun or snow, her leather bag filled with dried herbs, clean linens, and a quiet strength. She brought countless children into the harsh, beautiful world of Appalachia. She was a bringer of life, a comforter in times of pain. She saw the first breath of many, and sometimes she was there for the last. This intimacy with life and death set her apart. Maeve lived alone, her cabin a small speck against the vast wilderness. Some found this unsettling, a woman alone with such knowledge. She understood the mountain's rhythms, their hidden remedies, their subtle dangers. This deep connection to the natural world made some of the more fearful folk uneasy. They didn't understand her wisdom, and what people don't understand, they often begin to fear. Then came a season of hardship. The rains failed and the corn withered on the stalk. A strange sickness swept through the valley, taking the young and the old with a chilling impartiality. Milk soured in the pail, livestock died inexplicably. The natural order of things seemed to curdle, and fear, a cold and insidious vine, began to creep into the hearts of the mountain folk. They looked for reasons, for someone to blame. It is an old human habit. When the world turns cruel, we search for a face to put on our misfortune, a target for our rising panic. The whispers began quietly, like the rustling of dry leaves before a storm. They started in the darkest corners of cabins, over weak fires, between worried glances. Maeve Corbin, her solitary life, her strange knowledge of herbs that could heal, but perhaps could also harm. Her uncanny way of knowing things. She walks alone, she talks to the trees. The misfortunes must be her doing. The seeds of doubt, once planted, grew quickly in the barren soil of their desperation. What was once seen as wisdom now looked like something far more sinister. The night they came for Maeve Corbin was moonless and cold. A wind, sharp as broken glass, tore through Wraith Pass, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, and something else, the metallic tang of fear. The mob was not made of monsters, not in the way stories sometimes tell. They were ordinary people. Farmers, mothers, men who worked the stubborn land, but fear had made them monstrous. They carried torches that threw wild, dancing shadows, and their faces were grim, set in lines of misguided righteousness. They dragged Maeve from her small cabin, her protests swallowed by their angry shouts. She pleaded with them. She reminded them of the children she had delivered, the fevers she had broken, the comfort she had offered. But her words were like stones dropped into a raging river, lost instantly. Their ears were deafened by the drumbeat of their own terror. They saw not the healer who had served them, but the witch they had conjured in their minds. The memory of her kindness, of her gentle hands, was buried deep beneath layers of superstition and blame. They were beyond reason, beyond compassion, driven by a primal need to exorcise the evil they believed she embodied. They took her to the loneliest part of Wraith Pass, to the place where the railway tracks cut a cold steel wound through the heart of the ancient mountains. This was to be her pyre, her punishment, not fire but something colder, more inexorable. The unyielding iron, a symbol of the new world that had carved its way through their old one, would be the instrument of their vengeance. They chained her to the tracks. The cold steel bit into her skin. The wind shrieked around her like a chorus of condemnations. Maeve looked into the faces of those she had once helped, and saw only strangers, their eyes reflecting the flickering torchlight, devoid of mercy. The train came. A scream of metal on metal, a roar of steam and fire that filled the narrow pass, then a deafening impact, and then an unnatural silence descended, deeper and more profound than before. The wind held its breath. The very mountains seemed to recoil. When the first pale light of dawn crept over the ridges, some of the villagers, perhaps driven by a sliver of guilt or morbid curiosity, ventured back to the tracks. They found the heavy chains, twisted and broken, lying on the cold, damp ground. But of Maeve Corbin, there was no sign, no trace, and stranger still, there was no sign of the train. No wreckage, no oil, no disturbed ballast. It was as if the locomotive, having fulfilled its terrible purpose, had simply vanished into the morning mist, taking Maeve with it. Or perhaps, taking something of Maeve into itself. The pass felt different that morning, colder. An invisible weight pressed down on the land. A new sorrowful presence had been born from the night's brutality. The villagers returned to their homes, shaken, whispering that something unnatural had occurred, something beyond their understanding or control. From that day forward, the legend of the Witch of Wraith Pass began to grow. They said Maeve's spirit, in its agony and rage, had fused with the train, the instrument of her murder. She became part of it, her grief fueling its spectral engine, her screams echoing in its mournful whistle. The train was no longer a thing of iron and steam, but a phantom, an extension of her tormented soul, doomed to ride the rails of Wraith Pass for eternity. The old folks in the Appalachian foothills still pass down the warnings about Wraith Pass. Don't linger there after dusk, they'll tell you, their voices low and serious. Don't speak Maeve Corbin's name too loudly within its shadowed confines, lest you draw her attention. And never, ever, mock the stories of the ghost train. Disbelief, they say, can be a dangerous thing when faced with a sorrow as deep and as wronged as Maeve's. The past remembers, and it does not take kindly to scoffers. Her presence is a palpable thing, a weight in the air, a chill that seeps into your bones. There are signs, they say, that herald Maeve's spectral presence. A sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, even on a warm night, is a common precursor. The air might become heavy with the scent of coal smoke, acrid and biting, mixed with the sweet, earthy fragrance of mountain herbs, the very herbs Maeve once used to heal. Unexplained lights might flicker in the deep woods like the lanterns of a phantom crew or the single baleful eye of her ghostly locomotive. And always there is the feeling of being watched, of an immense sadness pressing in from the darkness. The ghost train of Wraith Pass is more than just a local legend, more than a spooky tale to tell around a campfire. It is an echo of a terrible injustice, a manifestation of pain and betrayal that refuses to fade. Maeve's spirit, forever bound to the scene of her demise, rides on, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk within human hearts when fear takes hold. Her mournful whistle is not just a sound, it is a cry for a justice she never received in life, a sorrow that time has failed to heal. The train is her cage, and her eternal restless journey. So, if you ever find yourself deep in the heart of those ancient Appalachian mountains, when the night is dark and the wind whispers secrets through the trees, be cautious. If you hear a train whistle where no train should be, a lonely wailing sound that cuts through the stillness, pause for a moment. It might just be Maeve Corbin, the Witch of Wraith Pass, on her eternal ride.